welcome. This is my live stream going over these crazy events. What's up, Mr. Johnson? Mr. Eric Johnson, appreciate everything you do, bro. Mr. Bell is here. On time, every time. Yep, so that's the shooter. Now, well, I'll try. You know, I will try to do another wrestling video when it suits. Yeah, I've already seen Black Panther though, but I'm gonna go see it in IMAX. See, we didn't have the luxury of seeing it in IMAX. When you see it in IMAX, please go see it in IMAX because there's extra scenes that's cut out in the regular version. That's what they told us. So if you watch it in the full IMAX screen, then you get to see it. Now, this is the shooter from yesterday. And he was denied bond. I doubt he cares. The look on his face says he doesn't care. To do what he just did was a sign of somebody who don't care. Now, here, can somebody explain to me how a guy... Of course there's a 3D IMAX. 3D IMAX is 10 times that's the real 3D. But yeah. But if somebody explain to me how a black guy on Instagram, you know, like a Kodak Black, could have a gun in the video and 16,000 cops come and arrest him out of his house. This guy who has a number of flags, thanks Eric, this guy has posted stuff on the internet with guns, post-terrorist things. They said they've been watching him. They've been watching him. Now how you go from we've been watching and monitoring this guy and know every single thing he did, then posted, oh, his mom recently died and now he's disturbed. He's in a group. He's in a known group of white supremacists down in Florida. Posting stuff on the internet. You could have prevented 17 people from dying and another 17 from being hurt. But you didn't. You chose not to. No, all of the things that were done, it's like, why is it so easy to take down a rapper who you know ain't finna go shoot nobody, but you gonna send police officers to their house to arrest them for having guns, and you watching them so close. But this guy who was watched close by the federal government, all of a sudden, we just omit all of those things. You don't find that strange? You know why? Because he went to a very privileged school. A lot of people who go to that school, families did pretty well. The area is very expensive. Anthony Rizzo for the Chicago Cubs, he actually went to that school. A lot of people went to that school. that were upper class. That's why it's getting so much media attention, one. And the fact is how they responded. The bodies are still in the school. If it wasn't for social media, the parents posting things on social media, we wouldn't have even known about all of this. But if a rapper posts something on TV, there it is.
There are questions that people want to deal with legally. I mean, there's not much more to say. We know where we stand in terms of charges. We know where we're going with this. But in terms of legal responsibility, too, this is the criminal phase. There could be more to come, but there are a lot of questions, too, about how we got here in the first place.
That's right.
How much of that is being addressed today, do you think, and will be addressed in the coming week?
You know, Erica, I'm hopeful that it's not only today in the coming weeks, but I'm hopeful that the discussion that we continue to have, which is so hurtful to you, me, so many people that watch, is a discussion that results in some actual change. How many of these school shootings do we need to see before there is some change about, we can talk about responsibility, social media imprints, who, if anyone, should have known that he had mental ailments or maladies that could have been addressed. You know, we could talk about all those things, and we, of course, should be talking about the politics behind it, because is it time for legislation? Is it time to examine whose hands guns should be in? I think that all needs not only to be part of a discussion, but it needs to be part of a societal fix. Unless you and I next month, the month after, the week after that, may be talking about people like him for a long time to come. And so, you know, I could go on forever, but it's got to get to the point where we got to get our arms around this so that people are not just going into schools with, I mean, again, this gun, I get the Second Amendment, but it seems like there need to be some regulations on who has guns, what those guns have the capacity to do. I mean, have your gun, but you're loading up weapon after weapon. It's just problematic.
It is, and it has a lot of people fired up and angry today in the midst of their grief as well. And I think most importantly, when we see the students who are in that school speaking up and saying, I want action, maybe finally someone will start to listen and pull their politics out of it. Joey, thank you. We don't want to forget the victims here. And we are only just starting to learn who they are. We are seeing the images, we are seeing the pictures from inside, from the survivors. I want to show you one of those. In this video, you see a classroom here just before the SWAT comes in. So that moment there, that of course just one of so many moments we're learning about. CNN national correspondent Natasha Chen is outside the high school there in Parkland, Florida. And as we know, of course, 7 people in the hospital, 17 people lost their lives. And Natasha, their families are starting to share with us their identities and more about each one of these victims.
Absolutely, Erica, and we're seeing the community start to remember them by putting crosses and flowers on that fence along the border right there. I believe that's one cross for every one of the 17 victims, and the people that we see coming to this area are really huddled together in prayer. I've seen one person even bring a poster with photos of 2 of the closest people that she lost yesterday. One of the people that we're hearing about, she was a student at this school. Her father posted about her, Jamie Gutenberg. He posted on Facebook saying that his heart is broken and he doesn't know how his family is going to get through this. That's a similar sentiment I'm hearing from classmates who really do not know how to process something this intense and this upsetting. A lot of them were in the school building where this happened. A lot of them heard those gunshots. We heard from another student who actually heard the shots when the teacher went outside the door and was shot outside the classroom door. Of course, we also have to talk about some of the victims yesterday who really died in acts of heroism in trying to save others' lives. And those are some of the teachers that you've heard about. This assistant coach who used himself as a human shield to block the students. Both the communications director of the football team and the football team via their Twitter account called him a hero. The athletic director, just adults who definitely put their own lives in the line of fire so that others might be saved, Erica.
So many of these stories of heroism and from people whom so many in this community respected and adored and looked up to. Natasha, thank you. We know the suspect legally bought that AR-15 style weapon which was used in the attack, passing the background check to purchase it. Could that shooting have been prevented, though, if mental health issues were considered before someone was able to legally purchase a weapon?
Pray for this city, pray for this school, the parents, the folks that lost their lives.
I mean, it's just your worst nightmare as a parent. He said, Mom, it was real. It was really real. He said, I saw 2 students dead and a teacher dead.
This is just absolutely pure evil.
Women.
He is hurting right now. There's going to be a lot of conversations over the next couple of days and weeks, and I'm going to be very animated about what I think this country can do to possibly prevent these tragedies in the future. Today's a day of healing. Today's a day of mourning.
A day of healing, a day of mourning, but there will be much more to come from that sheriff. A community is coming together, meeting recently for a vigil at Park Ridge Baptist Church. The service wrapping up a short time ago. Mike Alanos joins us now with more, and a fair amount of people turning out today, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, when you and I spoke last hour, Erica, there were literally hundreds of people here coming together for a prayer vigil, different denominations, the Muslim faith represented here as well. It was a community coming together, and I asked the pastor, how do you comfort people? And he just said, we need to be there for each other. And that's what we saw. As you saw the emotions, holding hands, people hugging, the tears, yet a strength coming. This community may have been shaken to its core, Erica, but they are strong and resilient moving forward. And the proceedings wrapped up with each member of the different denomination, leader of that denomination, releasing a balloon as the song Amazing Grace was sang. And at that moment, there was one woman who just collapsed in her grief, and you could hear her sob. And I think many in the crowd could hear that as well. And it was one more reminder of the tragedy we're dealing with. And you've mentioned it as well. The age of those dealing with this, 14, 15-year-old freshmen in high school. Had a chance to speak with one of them, Tajane Thomas, who in a very stoic fashion retold the story of hearing that fire alarm going off, walking outside of her classroom, and then hearing gunshots. Here she is.
At that moment, I wanted to just like stand there in shock, like that just really happened. But I ran with my friends. I was like, get whoever I can, protect them, and get out of here. Like anyone that's close to me, just go. And I had 3 other people with me. We ran and ended up in someone's house until my parents came.
What was that moment like when you were away from this terrible tragedy and you were in somebody else's house? Did the tears start to flow? What were the emotions like?
The tears didn't even come then. The tears came after the fact that I realized my sister's in there, my other sister's at West Glades. I don't know where my friends are. I don't know if anyone's okay. So I was just trying to hang in there for my mom at that moment.
Okay. And all your sisters are okay?
Yes.
Everybody's good?
Yes.
And Erica, she mentioned her mom. I had a chance to talk to her mom, Faye, and just complimenting her how well her daughter's handling herself and all this, telling the story. And Mom said, when we go home, that's when the tears flow. That's when a 15-year-old really is grasping what she's witnessed. You know, it's interesting to note, Erica, I was just talking with our producer, Hannah, here, that 24 hours ago to the minute, life was normal here in this beautiful town of Parkland. Here we are 24 hours later, and folks are trying to put back the pieces together, and it's a day of remembrance. We're going to another event right now where I believe the hero coach, Coach Aaron, is going to be honored, who literally laid down his life for these children. We'll keep you updated from Parkland throughout the day. Back to you.
All right, Mike, thank you. And boy, that does put it in perspective. Almost exactly 24 hours ago is when everything changed. CNN correspondent Brian Todd joins us on the story as well with more on the suspect from outside the courthouse, the suspect who we just saw appearing before the judge, Brian.
That's right, Erica. The suspect was right before the judge just a few minutes ago here at the Broward County Courthouse. He did not enter a plea. The judge did not ask him to enter a plea. This was a very short hearing to basically remind the suspect, Nicholas Cruz, of what he was charged with. This was not an arraignment. A formal arraignment won't come for several weeks. The suspect appeared in an orange jumpsuit. He was shackled at the wrists. He might have been shackled at the ankles as well, and was looking down most of the time. We were told by a prominent defense attorney that this would be a very brief hearing, that the judge was expected to do exactly what she did here, basically remind him of the charges against him, the 17 counts of premeditated murder, and that she would order him held without bond, which is exactly what she did. She was to appoint him an interim attorney, possibly a public defender, and it appeared that there were at least one public defender was there with him. In the meantime, Erica, we're learning a little bit more about his background, piecing together some of the warning signs that may have been there for the suspect, Nicholas Cruz. The Anti-Defamation League says that a spokesperson for a white supremacist group based in Florida, a group called the Republic of Florida, that a spokesperson told the ADL that the suspect had ties to that group, that the suspect took part in some training exercises with the group, but that spokesperson said the group did not ask for, did not order, did not want him to commit any crime like the one we saw yesterday. So that's one of the parts of his background that we pieced together, in addition to the social media postings that he had that officials have told us about, Erica, which they say were very, very disturbing. He had references to committing violence. He had pictures of guns and knives on there on his social media postings. So some of that mosaic being put together on this man's background and some of the warning signs that were there before this horrific event yesterday, Erica.
Brian Todd with more for us. Brian, thank you. We just heard Brian lay out what officials have been referring to as we look back and try to figure out were there signs, was anything missed, talking about these disturbing social media posts, about a connection with this white supremacist group. We're also hearing from the family through their attorney who took this man in. His mother died in November, we know, and then this family said, you can come and live with us. Describing him through their attorney as dealing with depression, but being mild-mannered and quiet. And that brings up the question of mental health, which always seems to come up in these decisions. And there's a lot of finger-pointing that dealing with mental health is the issue. We even heard from Florida Governor Rick Scott earlier. Take a listen.
Next week in Tallahassee, I'm going to sit down with state leaders. We're going to have a real conversation about two things. How do we make sure when a parent is ready to send their child to school that in Florida, that parent knows that child is going to be safe? Number two, how do we make sure that individuals with mental illness do not touch a gun?
Well, we're not waiting until next week to have that conversation. We're actually going to start it right now. Joining me is psychiatrist and psychoanalyst Dr. Gail Saltz, as well as HLN legal analyst and criminal defense attorney Joey Jackson. Gail, whenever this comes up, there are two things that we hear. It's too soon, which is not true. It's too late, and we're hearing that from the students who lived through it, who say they want to talk now. And also that this is all about mental health. That's a big umbrella.
Yeah, I have to call BS on this somewhat because I feel that this is a political maneuver to just not talk about guns. Mental health is a big issue in this country, don't get me wrong. I'm a psychiatrist. I would love to see more dollars come into mental health. But 1 out of every 10 people in this country will suffer a serious major depression. Yes, those rates are high in teenage years. Obviously, not 1 out of 10 kids is committing a school shooting. I mean, I would be fine with taking guns away from someone who is suffering a serious major depression or any other serious mental health issue. But the reality is a deep brain structure that increases their desire for any political beliefs, and that's why it's so hard to change minds.
Happy Valentine's Day to you too.
Coming together at the table and laying out the data, how many of these people really are mentally ill in the classic sense that we treat and could be identified, and actually putting the numbers out there, in terms of informing about our brains in adolescence, etc. Putting those numbers out there.
But the problem I have, though, Dr. Gale, is that mental illness
I appreciate that, Mr. Sledge.
But when it's used to suggest that it's the component of it, it's a problem with me. I'm looking here, and it's talking about, New York Times article, great article, about how it's easier to get an AR-15, right, than it is to get a handgun. Why?
I work at
Newtown, San Bernardino,
IBA.
Las Vegas, Sutherland Springs, Parkland, AR-15. Isn't it
on
time
Barclay
to address
Road
the
in
issue
Buffalo
beyond
Grove,
mental health
Illinois?
of why we're allowing these weapons to be so easily accessible to people who shouldn't have them?
It's a great, unfortunately we have to leave it there because we're tight on time, but here's the thing. I don't want this conversation to end. This conversation is long overdue, and if we can have it here, I hope that we can keep doing it.
Yes.
Gail, Joey, thank you both.
Thank you.
A lot of what people are looking for, of course, on this day after is, were there signs missed? What did people not see? Was there anything in the accused shooter's past that could have pushed him in this direction? And most importantly, what did the FBI find when they were alerted to someone who made a comment about wanting to be a professional school shooter with the same name as the accused? We're going to get to all of that. But what I don't want to forget
Well,
in
when
this
you're
discussion
white, it's mental
is that
health.
17 people lost their lives yesterday. 7 people are still in the hospital. And an
If he was
untold
Arabic,
number of
it's terrorists.
will be impacted for the rest of their lives. As we're starting to learn their identities, here are 6 of those who were killed on Wednesday.
Information was provided through the radio dispatch. I decided to travel in some of the residential areas located near the school. And as I traveled down one of the back roads, it's a heavily residential area, I happened to come across, it was just myself. There was not a lot of people out, a couple people walking their dogs in the area. As I continued down this roadway, I discovered an individual walking on the sidewalk that was wearing the clothing description that had been given over the radio. He looked like a typical high school student, and for a quick moment, I thought, could this be the person? Is this who I need to stop? Training kicked in. I pulled my vehicle over immediately, engaged the suspect. He complied with my commands and was taken into custody without any issues.
Did you have his weapon with him?
I can't comment on that. This investigation is still ongoing. I'd just like to take this time right now to express my gratitude for my brothers and sisters in law enforcement, emergency services that have put all their heart and soul into this. This is what we train for. We hope this never happens. But I just want to thank them. I want to thank them for all their services and everything that they do. And my condolences to the family that has loved ones that have been lost. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Frank Babinec, last name spelled B-A-B-I-N-E-C. I'm the fire chief for the Coral Springs Parkland Fire Department. Before I start off with how this went for us yesterday, I'd like to tell all the residents of Parkland and Coral Springs that from all the men and women of our department that we are very sorry for what they're going through. Our firefighters share in their grief. They feel for them. They feel with them. We are part of the community, and we are here to protect them during the event, and we will be here to protect them after the event. Yesterday, just before 2:30 p.m., we received a call for a possible active shooter event at Stoneman Douglas High School. As we started our response, we really weren't sure if this was a real event or not. We get calls like this once in a while, and they turn out to be non-real calls, which is a good thing. But as we began to respond, we got more and more information that made this more and more real for us. Myself, along with several other chief officers and fire personnel, were responding to the scene. As we got to the scene, we had to set up an appropriate command post and triage area to deal with the amount of possible patients that we were going to have. As we approached the scene and got set up, we got some information that there may be patients on the west side of the building. So I went around to investigate that, where we did locate one victim and removed them from that area, and I returned to the command post. I can tell you that all the first responders train for events like this. We hope we never have to use it. We hope we never have to use that training. This is a horrible event. But I'm very, very proud of all of the firefighter paramedics, all the first responders, the ER folks, everybody that treated these patients did it with such a high level of professionalism and readiness that I cannot say enough about. I want to thank you guys for allowing this opportunity, and our firefighters can never, our first responders can never unsee what they saw yesterday. So we will work with them to make sure they get the resources they need to get through this as part of the community. Thank you. Thank you.
Officer, City of Coconut Creek.
And we've been hearing there from first responders who were on the scene there, among the first to respond yesterday when the calls came in from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. One of the things that we just heard there, these first responders can never unsee what they saw. They will have grief counseling. They will have folks there to help them. But that just gives you a sense, well, this is what they trained for. This is what they do. This was a tough scene. There is no denying it. I want to turn now to CNN correspondent Jessica Schneider, who has more now on the investigation and what we're learning, too, about the footprint of the suspect here, Jessica.
Yeah, Erica, a lot, of course, emerging now in this 24 hours after this horrific shooting where 17 people were killed by this gunman. Investigators pretty quickly after that arrested this gunman. He was in custody. We know that the gunman had been talking to investigators. Of course, he has made his initial court appearance. But what has emerged in just the past few hours is that we understand that this gunman was affiliated with a white supremacist group in Florida. It's called Republic of Florida. The Anti-Defamation League actually talked to the spokesman for this group, who acknowledged that the gunman had participated in some training exercises. We understand that the gunman was invited to participate with the group from another member, but the spokesperson for this white supremacist group put it clearly, saying that the group had not ordered or wanted crews to do anything like this school shooting. However, the questions about the gunman continue, especially with his social media footprint. We've seen a lot of things posted online. On Instagram, this gunman posted photos of him brandishing weapons, including knives as well as guns. In one case, a handgun that might have been a BB gun, as well as a shotgun. In addition, we know that this gunman did post quite a few times on YouTube under videos. And some of those comments were quite disturbing as well, including one where he said, "I want to shoot people with my AR-15." And of course, we know it was an AR-15 style weapon that he used in this high school shooting. So, Erica, a lot of questions still remain for investigators, but things and details.
No, they knew. How they just pull all this up all of a sudden? They
social
knew.
Media use. So that's obviously all being looked
at
now.
But if it's a rapper,
as the Broward County
they
Sheriff
send 50 squad cars to their house to come arrest them, and they know a rapper ain't finna go shoot nobody.
There's been a lot of talk about what these children, what the staff was trained to do, and this is a part of everyday life in schools now, training for an active shooter situation. My next guest, though, says students shouldn't just be running out of the building.
At Joseph A. Bank's President's Day sale, get up to 70%.
Crime and Justice, tonight, starting at 6 on HLN.
He still will forever be my hero. I will never forget the actions that he took for me and for fellow students in the classroom. And if his family is watching this, please know that your son or your brother was an amazing person, and I am alive today because of him.
One of the students there reacting earlier today, the suspected shooter apparently pulled the fire alarm in the school. Keep in mind, this is sort of an open campus with several buildings. And that is when, after that, as students ran outside, the shots began to fire. Well, he then allegedly entered the school, roaming the halls, targeting people who were huddled together. There is training for this, and most schools in this country now do active shooter training, and they deal with this. And this school, we've been told, has dealt with it too. Joining us now is Kenneth Trump, president of the National School Safety and Security Services. You know, it's interesting. People have very strong views on this. A lot of former law enforcement who advise a lot of schools, teachers who and staff and administrators who are the people who are actually there every day and know what it takes. And if you look at the government's own website at ready.gov, they advise that if you're in an active shooter situation, first you should run.
I gotta be honest.
And if you can't do that, you should.
I don't normally buy into a lot of conspiracy
theories. They went into the lockdown as they've been trained to do, and that their teachers took them into closets or into classrooms and hid them to get them safe, as they were supposed to do.
Exactly, Erica. And this is
he wouldn't have caught me hiding behind no desk and either walking up shooting me. But these are kids. You're right. These are kids. But even my teenage self, I'd have closed that door. I'd have grabbed something like a weapon.
These are children.
He would have had to come through the door, either shoot the door open, or come in the door some type of way.
Where it originally started, and perhaps even at the college level. But at the school level, since Columbine, we focused on lockdowns, and lockdowns do work. Cases where teachers have been able to lock down have been proven time and time again to make sure the kids are safe and that they're not breached.
If I'm a teacher, I'm going to have to hide a gun somewhere. I'm going to have to have something on me.
We won't even get into the fight part right now. If you look at the run piece, think about this. When children are running, leaving a secure area like a lockdown classroom, for example, they're running outside of the building while law enforcement is rushing into the scene, and their law enforcement is coming up on hundreds and maybe thousands of kids. They don't know who the bad guy is. It's going to make it harder for them to enter, to locate, neutralize the shooter, because they're going to have to work their way through all those people running out, one of whom, as we saw yesterday.
I want to point out, too, in the video that we're watching, we do not know where these students were running from or what time this is. So we don't know for sure that these kids were running on their own, because once the classrooms were cleared, we heard from one student, as soon as the SWAT teams cleared the classrooms, they would say, "We want you to run now." So they were given the okay. When we look at this, though, we are putting a lot on our teachers these days, as we know, and this goes far beyond, let's have a fire drill. What do we do to get safely out of the building? How often do we need to do these active shooter trainings, and at what age do they start?
Yeah. The key word is reasonableness, and the next phrase after that is do no harm. We want to make sure that we meet somewhere along the lines of not just having a plan, setting up on a shelf, collecting dust on one extreme, and not going over the top on the other extreme where you do psychological harm or even physical harm. In some cases now we're seeing workers' comp claims run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars in lawsuits just for teachers injured from active shooter drills. So we want to make sure that we're doing them reasonably. We recommend lockdowns 3 to 4 times a year, but instead of just doing them in the morning, as one of the kids that you interviewed yesterday mentioned, do them during lunchtime, between class changes as students arrive, or at the end of the day at dismissal. When you have a fire drill, practice recall, so as the people go out, how quickly can you recall them back in, or block an exit to get people to think on their feet. There are things that we can do in the course of the regular drills. They don't have to be every week or every day. 3 or 4 lockdowns a year, done diversified. Do your fire drills so that you tweak those. Get people to think on their feet, but don't cross that line of do no harm.
Kenneth, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica.
As we're talking about the victims here, we know that there are still 7 people who are in the hospital. CNN correspondent Diane Gallagher joins us now from Deerfield Beach, Florida, outside Broward Health North Hospital. And is this where all 7 are being treated right now?
No. So, Erica, they're sort of split up. The 7 patients, there are 3 here and 4 at the other hospital. They are they're sort of talking as their health system, though. So at this point, we still have those 3 patients in critical condition. One of those is here right now, and that is a patient. We just spoke with one of the doctors. He said that that patient is going to be having surgery a little later today. They're hoping that at that point that they can change their sort of situation at that point. We can maybe not be in critical condition anymore. But again, it's a surgery that's going to be held a little later this afternoon for that patient.
So more of that will be coming this afternoon. Just give us a sense. I know doctors came out and spoke a little bit earlier. We're hearing a little bit more about the conditions. In some ways, it's surprising, just based on the sense that we have of the chaos that was there, that there are only 7 people in the hospital right now, Diane.
You know, Erica, it really is, especially when we heard these doctors talk about what it was like in the ER and OR immediately afterward. Now, here at Broward North, they had 9 patients who were brought here. One of those was the suspect, and that was at the exact same time that they were bringing in these teenagers and adults who were suffering from multiple gunshot wounds, we're told. According to one of the doctors, most of the wounds were to the torso area, and remember, this is an AR-15 style weapon. He described the wounds as very large, a lot of soft tissue damage, and the teenagers, for the most part, as frightened. He said that they were pale, they weren't talking. You could tell how scared they were at that time, Erica, in order to sort of alleviate the situation. And they said that they do these in a lot of cases where crimes are committed because it is their responsibility to treat any and everyone, no matter what they may be accused of. But they took the suspect and they put him in a completely separate room with the police officers to treat him. We're told that he was brought in for agitation. There was no bullet wound or anything like that. They didn't see anything physically wrong, but then they allowed the ER doctors to handle the suspect while the OR doctors moved in on all of those patients who were brought in, those victims from the school, Erica. Now, we've talked about the 2 who were shot at the school and brought to this hospital and died. We learned a little bit ago from those doctors that they were dead on arrival, so there was nothing they said that they could do at that point. No surgeries could help.
Diane Gallagher with more for us there. Diane, thank you. We are also now hearing from the White House that the president has canceled a second event due to the tragedy in Parkland, Florida, calling off a political rally in Pennsylvania scheduled for next week. A short time ago, we also learned that an event in Orlando, Florida, set for tomorrow had been canceled. A lot of reaction around the country, and this cover of the New York Daily News getting a lot of attention. I leave that there for you to look at.
$00202. Do you have an idea for an adventure?
I hear gunshots. We just got a code red notification, so get me ASAP. There are gunshots in our school. Hell, someone died. Come now.
And then we just heard gunshots. And then me and my friend ran outside the class. We ran downstairs. And then right after that, I looked back up and he got shot in the head.
It really opens your eyes, you know, this happens all around you, but you never think it's going to happen to you.
And now we're looking at the 19-year-old suspected of firing those shots, taking 17 lives. This is his first court appearance a short time ago. He did not enter a plea. He's facing 17 counts of premeditated murder. He's being held without bond. And the public defender now coming out and saying that his client is under suicide watch, noting the alleged shooter is a deeply troubled young man, and that he's actually expressed sadness at the deaths of children. And let's not forget about who died here and who these victims are. 17 people killed. We now have 6 of them who have been identified. Alyssa Al-Hadef, who loved to travel. She loved soccer. She loved her friends. Jamie Gutenberg's father, writing, "My heart is broken." 7 patients remain hospitalized at this hour. 4 of them are in critical condition. 2 listed as stable. 1 is said to be in good condition. But the folks you see on the screen, those are the 6 victims who have been identified. And again, we will soon be learning the names of 11 more. I encourage you to keep them in your thoughts. Thank you for joining us today on The Story. I'm Erica Hill. Michaela Pereira picks up our coverage after this short break.
she said at 2:38, tell them someone is hurt on the 3rd floor of the 1200 building. We can hear him crying and praying.
Some of my classmates did not know if they were leaving the school alive.
I just literally was praying. It was the most scariest experience of my life.
He was sobbing. He said, Mom, it was real. It was really real.
Life is really precious. Anything can happen within seconds, and we all have to treat each other with love and respect and kindness, because whatever caused this, it was caused by hate.
Some kids having to grow up real fast. Good afternoon, I'm Michaela Pereira. We continue today's special coverage of the Florida school massacre, a massacre that killed 17 people. The suspect, 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz, made his first court appearance within the last hour on 17 counts of premeditated murder.
Your Honor, releasing plea on behalf of Mr. Cruz.
Okay, thank you. Are you Nicholas Jacob Cruz?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sir, you are charged with 17 counts of premeditated murder. I have something very important to tell you. You're charged with some very serious crimes. You have the right to remain silent. If you give up that right at any time during this hearing, whatever you say can and will be used against you in the prosecution of this case.
This happened earlier today. Cruz is going to remain in custody without bond. The FBI was warned about him, including the time he allegedly wrote on YouTube that he wanted to be a professional school shooter. Investigators say what they are seeing now as they look into his digital footprint, they're finding on his social media account, what they're finding there is very, very disturbing, including a comment where he is said to have written, "I want to shoot people with my AR-15. We are going to dig more into all of this.
They target the rappers.
2 hours, but we need to focus on the people whose lives were lost. Emotional vigils.
This is somebody they had under surveillance.
In fact, an overflow crowd packed into Park Ridge Church to pray today.
We gather this afternoon with grieving hearts and a deep sense of loss and heartbreak. We gather as death and senseless tragedy seemingly become more and more commonplace. As we gather this afternoon, we gather, but we can no longer be silent as a faith and church community.
We heard from the church director there. Mike Galanos was there at that vigil, and now I understand you've moved locations. You're at Pine Trails Park, and there are many, many people gathered. Tell us about what you see behind you.
Well, I see that probably more of an emotional vigil here, because so many more of the students from the high school where this tragedy unfolded are here. And behind me, Michaela, I don't know if you can see it, there's 17 angels on the stage. One angel for each of the lives lost. One of those angels, Alyssa Hallideff, just 14 years old, and I'm joined now by her mom, Lori. And so first off, we are so sorry for your loss. I'm sure you're numb at this point. Where would you like to start as you remember your daughter?
My daughter, Alyssa Hallideff, was a beautiful young lady. Yesterday, on Valentine's Day, I dropped her off at school and I said, I love you. And then a few hours later, I get a call that there's a shooter at Stoneman Douglas High School. And I ran as fast as I could to get there. And I knew at that point she was gone. I felt it in my heart. How do we allow a gunman to come into our children's school? How do they get through security? What security is there? There's no metal detectors. The gunman, a crazy person, just walks right into the school, knocks down the window of my child's door, and starts shooting her, and killing her. President Trump, you say, what can you do? You can stop the guns from getting into these children's hands. Put metal detectors at every entrance to the schools. What can you do? You can do a lot. This is not fair to our families, that our children go to school and have to get killed. I just spent the last 2 hours putting the burial arrangements for my daughter's funeral, who's 14. President Trump, please do something. Do something. Action! We need it now. These kids need safety now.
Yes.
You voted for.
It's the heart of a mom who's broken at this time. Thank you for your heart. We're sorry for your loss, Lori. Anything else you'd like to add? Can you, as we turn and think of an angel lost, your daughter, what would you like us to know about her?
Alyssa was a beautiful, smart, talented, successful, awesome, amazing soccer player. And you'll be great, Miss Alyssa. We love you so much. And you will always, always be in our hearts. We love you.
Lori, thank you. Thank you again for sharing your heart and your emotions. And Michaela, those are the emotions we're experiencing here. As I had mentioned, there's many more people from the school, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, and the emotions are raw. You heard that from a mom. The students as well, as they hold each other and hug, and the tears are shed. I overheard students saying, "We could all be dead." Then the tears began to flow. So we'll continue to follow the emotions and the sentiments here in Parkland. Back to you.
The misery that is raised down on these people, on this mother, and the 17 other mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers of the victims that are now gone. It's important to give them voice. It is really difficult to hear, but it's important. It's important the president hears that. It is important that our lawmakers hear that mother's pain. Mike Galanos, thank you. A student at MSD, at Stoneman Douglas High School, is how they called it, MSD, says she watched her favorite teacher, he's pictured here, Scott Beagle, die as he tried to lock the door of his classroom to keep his students safe. Our Christy Paul is going to have much more on this young man and the other victims of this senseless murder in less than 15 minutes.
Our first responders can never unsee what they saw yesterday, so we will work with them to make sure they get the resources they need to get through this as part of the community.
First responders, they're talking about the horrifying scene that they encountered. Remember, the first responders in to find out what was happening there at Stoneman Douglas High School. They, along with the students, teachers, and parents who survived, will carry this with them for a very long time. One of those individuals is Jim Gard. Jim is a math teacher at Stoneman Douglas High School. He has been a teacher there for 36 years. And I imagine of all your time on campus, this was your darkest day. Jim, how are you?
Oh, I'm very good. How are you doing?
Well, I think we're all rattled by this. You seem pretty okay. Tell us where you were when all this went down.
Well, I've been teaching for 36 years. I've been on that Douglas since 2008.
Okay.
I was
sound like he excited to be on the television.
And about 50 yards from the shooting. And we just finished reviewing for a test that we're going to have. And about 2:20 or so, I heard the fire alarm went off. And I said, hold on, guys, this is really weird because we just had a fire drill at 9:30. So I said, hang in there for a bit. Let's see what's going on. Maybe it was something like the culinary, you know, sometimes cooked toast, bread burns, what have you, something very minor.
Right.
And so, but, lamp at the door, so we got ourselves lined up. And then I kind of reviewed.
Jim, you still there? Oh, I think we lost him. Well, let me just fill in the blanks a little bit, and then we'll see if we can reestablish contact with Jim. They believed that it was a fire alarm. They'd had a fire alarm earlier in the day, a fire drill. And so when the fire alarm went off, they sort of all lined up to get ready to go outside, and that's when the shooter opened fire and then followed the students who fled back into the school and shooting so many of them. I was really hoping to talk to Jim because Jim allegedly had that student, Nicholas Cruz, in his class last year. And what's interesting, and I'll fill you in on this, is that teachers were alerted that Nicholas Cruz was a concern. They got an email about this student that he was not allowed on campus carrying a backpack. So there were alerts about this young man, and that's something we're going to talk about coming up more in the show. Now, the president obviously
all
has
those
been
alerts,
well aware of
but
this. He was made
they want to go out the
briefed on
rappers.
the matter soon after it happened yesterday. He now has made plans to travel to Parkland, Florida, where he's set to meet with families. This morning at the White House, he tried to take on the role of comforter-in-chief, telling the country that making schools safer will be a priority. He had this message for the children.
I want to speak now directly to America's children, especially those who feel lost, alone, confused, or even scared. I want you to know that you are never alone and you never will be. You have people who care about you, who love you, and who will do anything at all to protect you.
However, the president made it clear that he is not diverting from the GOP party line, referring to the tragedy in Florida as a, quote, difficult issue of mental health, making no reference to guns or gun reform legislation. In stark contrast, President Obama tweeted this message, quote, "We are grieving with Parkland, but we are not powerless. Caring for our kids is our first job. And until we can honestly say that we're doing enough to keep them safe from harm, including long overdue common sense gun safety laws that most Americans want, then we have to change." Now, keep in mind, it's not just the dead. There were so many people injured, and because there are so many victims, certain types of blood are now in short supply. And this is an alert and a call for help. If you happen to be near Hollywood, Florida, you can actually donate right now. They're holding a blood drive until 7 p.m. The address there on your screen on North 29th Avenue. They're in special need of O-negative blood. And of course, because we're in the world we live in, we have to give you a reminder, if you have the flu or any flu-like symptoms, please, please, please wait until you're healthy to donate. All right, obviously, so much more coming out. We're working, trying to get Jim Gard back, again, the math teacher there at MSD at the school. And I think we've established contact with him again. Jim, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Oh, thank goodness. I always hate when those little gremlins get in the way of our technology. I want to sort of fast track to, you actually had Nicholas Cruz in your class last year?
It would have been a 16-17 year, but it wasn't very long. I was actually able to take a look and see if I could actually find him in my old grades. And it was really only for November, December of 16, so only a couple of months, really only a couple of classes. That's why I don't remember a whole lot about Nick. And I remember, where he sat, and he was very quiet, but nothing remarkable.
Nothing stood out to you?
No, because I really only had him for a couple of school weeks, and he was there here and there. So, yeah, just nothing really remarkable. Not like other kids who I really get to know.
Of course, especially if they've been with you for more than 1 year or even for a full semester. Let me ask you, though, you were made well aware as staff of that school because an email, we understand, was sent out to teachers about this student. Give us an idea of what you learned from that email.
Well, the only thing that I can remember, again, it was a year ago, was that it was one of those deals where if he has a backpack in class, let us know. I just don't have that email. I wish I did, but I don't have it. And so that could be virtually anything. I mean, there was nothing even to indicate that. I mean, maybe his parents didn't want to have a backpack, or maybe, anything innocent or something obviously as horrific as this.
Let me ask you about, what happened yesterday in terms of safety and security. Have you had concerns? You've taught for 36 years. Obviously, times have changed since you started out as a teacher first on the job. Have you had concerns about security and about the threat of potential violence at your school?
No. Spelman Douglas is really safe. And, I've only been there for 8 years, but as far as that previously in Central Fort Lauderdale, I was there 20-some years, and that was really safe. I mean, unfortunately, the times, they've changed, and this, unfortunately, becoming more of a norm than an exception.
Yeah, it is. Now, we've learned that some of your colleagues on staff are among the victims. The athletic director, the football coach, another teacher. What are your thoughts on those men that lost their lives? Especially, it sounds as though they were doing what they could to protect other kids.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, they're really are they're the true heroes. I mean, you know, even the kids who were killed are heroes. I'm sure they were trying to protect other children as well. No one is worth more than another. I mean, I knew Aaron. I knew one of our teachers well. I knew some of our AD well. I'm not sure the other teachers. I heard a couple rumors and names here or there, so I'm not real sure. I know there were one of my students, from what I understand, is among the dead. There might be a couple others as well.
Jim, I imagine it's a lot to process. I appreciate you joining us on the phone and especially putting up with some of the challenges of doing a broadcast. Our best to you. Have you been told when you need to go back to work?
No, we haven't. I know that we're not going back tomorrow. We have Monday off regardless. So maybe Tuesday, and I would frankly like to go back Tuesday and start teaching math again and try and make things as normal as possible for our kids.
Yeah, that's what you often hear from people is they want things to return to normal. Normal is going to be a hard place to find after something like this, but we certainly wish all of you well. Stoneman Douglas High School is in our thoughts, to be sure. Jim Gard, thanks so much for joining us today, and you take care of yourself.
Take care, bye-bye.
We're going to take a short break. More coverage when we return.
I hear gunshots. We just got a code red notification, so give me ASAP. There are gunshots in our school. Hell, someone died. Come now.
And then we just heard gunshots. And then me and my friend ran outside the class. We ran downstairs. And then right after that, I looked back up and he got shot in the head.
It really opens your eyes, you know, this happens all around you, but you never think it's going to happen to you.
Sadly, there's no denying that school shootings, they seem to have become a way of life here in America, and so have deaths by guns in the greater population. According to the CDC, on average, 35,000 people die from guns every single year. Think about that. 35,000 people, that's more people that can fit inside Madison Square Garden. That means on average, 96 Americans die every day because of a gun. And yet here we are talking about yet another mass shooting again. Joining me now is Shannon Watts. She is the passionate founder of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. Her group works to change gun laws across the country. And I know this was born after Sandy Hook. You said enough is enough. I have to do something, and here you are. Yet here we are again, Shannon. We heard the president in his comments today to the nation talking about whatever we can do to keep our children safe and how he's going to work to make schools safer. How did you react?
Well, he said whatever we can do to keep our schools safer, but he didn't mention the words gun violence. He didn't mention passing stronger gun laws, and we know that stronger gun laws would help diminish the amount of gun violence, not only mass shootings and school shootings, but the daily gun violence that kills 93 Americans. We know these laws work, and yet we have a president and some members of Congress who are beholden to the gun lobby. They take millions, if not tens of thousands of dollars from the gun lobbyists, and in turn, they are soft on this issue, and it is no longer acceptable. This is a crisis. We've had 291 shootings on school campuses since 2013. This is the 18th shooting on a school campus this year, and we have got to do more than thoughts and prayers. We have got to have action, and that means our legislators need to legislate.
We actually, at CNN, we count a different number. We use the number of 8 school shootings so far this year because we don't count robberies or guns that go off by accident when no one is hit. So you'll hear different numbers thrown around. Doesn't matter, 18 or 8, that is far too many because we're only in February. This is a problem that is unique to this nation, Shannon. And I think so many people are struggling about it. And one thing that you'll hear is that people will say today especially, oh, we can't be having this gun debate right now. We should be focusing on the victims. We do not disagree that we should be focusing on the victims, but we don't want any more victims. So it is time to talk about guns and what we're going to do about guns in the future in the nation.
Right. The day to talk about the problem of school shootings in this country is when there is a school shooting. It's not too soon. For the victims, it is too late. And that is a ploy by the gun lobby to get us to not have the conversation so that we never have it. I mean, I don't think we're supposed to be talking about the Kentucky school shooting either, or the Pulse nightclub shooting, or even Sandy Hook. So I'm going to talk about this, and everyone else should as soon as it happens. And we should talk about how we can act. You know, we are the government ultimately. Every American citizen has the right to create change and affect change. And that's what I do every single day for the last 5 years, is work to change our gun laws at the state and local level, because we know eventually we will get a Congress and a president who will do the right thing on this issue. But
the problem is, you say the word eventually, and I think, you know, the parents yesterday wish that it happened far sooner. So what can folks at home who are feeling like you and I, outraged, in the depths of despair, angry that teens and teachers died in a place they're supposed to feel safe, what can people do where they're sitting at home?
They can do a lot. So you're talking about this cathartic moment in Congress we are all waiting for, and it will happen. But in the meantime, we are passing stronger gun laws at the state level. If people want to join us, they can text the word ACT to 64433. We have chapters in every state of the country. We wake up and work on this issue. We're not anti-gun. We do not have any issue with the Second Amendment. This is just about the rights that go along with responsibilities. We're disarming domestic abusers. We're passing background check laws. We're passing red flag laws. We're passing laws that just restore the responsibilities that go along with gun rights. And you can do that right now.
Common sense gun laws. That's what we're looking at. Shannon Watts, I'm so grateful for your passion. I'm so grateful for your voice. Keep on using it, darling. So students at Stoneman Douglas High School were just 20 minutes from the end of their school day when those first deadly shots rang out. We'll have more on the timeline ahead.
Brushing only reaches 25% of your mouth. Listerine cleans virtually 100%, helping to prevent gum disease and bad breath. Never settle for 25%. Always go for 100. Bring out the bold.
Whether it's new business, new boss, or new romance, these are the designer moments.